Okay, so I did that 2 hour long special on that Provo therapist, and the story came out. I don't know, I don't recall being part of the story, but I wanted to add it in here so you guys know how really off kilter these guys are. And yes, they will sometimes commit suicide, yeah. And it's not because anybody bullied them or anything like that. There's a group of these guys. I was thinking about it. I go, yeah, no, the majority of them when I've seen that has to do with particularly in males. I'm sure there's some female cases, like, I would have to go through them, but particularly males that do this. It has to do with their entire Disneyland shutting down. And I'm glad there are some people in the comments are like, oh, yeah, those bullies. And then they become, I don't know why they said they become nurses. I'm like, that's crazy. Because there's another case, there was a female case that came up. I guess she's from Canada? Is it Canada? Australia? I don't know. That was a crazy one. I wasn't even looking for it, and YouTube decided to mix it in something I was looking for. And that lady reminds me of that crazy lady I lived with. Yeah, she would be one that would be just like that. In fact, she was talking about people dying and her killing a dog. Yeah, and blame the dog for her killing it. Jimmy, and had access to a gun that was not hers. But anyway, yeah, let's just ignore all that. Law enforcement. Okay, so Provo therapist arrested, accused of rape and sodomy of patients. Okay, so they say that, and we did a 2 hour thing. We're not getting into that again. But it said, after looking into the allegations, the police referred the case to the Utah County District. Now, I remembered reading that, but then it said there was a big old standoff. Okay, so they were searching for him and they located him near the town of Thistle, alone in his car, right? So now, he's like this big depressed guy. He's like, I'm going to go out, I'm going to take myself out or let the cops take me out. Like he's in this mindset, right? A 4 hour standoff ensured on Highway 89 near Thistle and north of Birdseye and was closed while tactical units from the Utah County Sheriff's Office responded. No one was injured in the standoff, though Sheriff's spokesman Sergeant Spencer Cannon said Owen had a gun in his possession at the time of the arrest, right? Owen safely surrendered and booked into custody at the Utah County Jail on suspicion of object rape and all that, right? So we went through that whole story, but here's the thing. They tried to get the victims to go try to catch him, and this guy is that person, okay? And there's always a possibility that he could take himself and somebody else out. And law enforcement keeps putting victims in this position and tell them to F you, okay, from now on. It would have been very easy for them to get a new person to go in there and see if he does that conduct to them as well, right? Or attempts to, or whatever, you know what I mean? And then they're protected, right? It's the victims telling him, hey, this guy keeps raping me. And they're like, hey, will you go back in there, and put yourself at risk again for us? Yeah, that's how they're doing us. Yeah. That's why I've been furious about the way that they had me go about these investigations, because they're all incel ASPD sociopaths. So they retaliate over anything. Any little thing that upsets them, then all of a sudden they go on this rampage and are raging like psychotic, like targeting the crap out of me, right? And it's like, I have no idea like why that started, things like that, right? But it's because of their mindset, right? And they like to make up things and paint themselves as the victim all the freaking time. It's not to say that they've never been a victim to things, but and mostly when you go back into the childhood portion, which we think that's where their brain is stuck, that they constantly see themselves as that little kid. Because all of us have gone through child abuse, so we can there is a relatability in the fact that you know how it feels as when you were a kid and you got abused, and there's things that people do that remind you of the abuse. That's different. These guys continually, they'll go and harm people. It's like, how dare you? Like the last case that I was reading, where just like the woman went over him because he's a socio. It's because they like to fight. The thing is that they chronically get into fights with everybody, versus they like to flip it onto the victim as to why the arguments are starting to begin with. It's a how dare you woman talk to me in this manner at all, because I am the authority, right? And I am abusing my power onto you. So of course you're going to want to go above them. They never remove those guys, right? So we would chronically complain about people in positions of power that did horrible things. So then if they're not going to remove them, then you're going to go around them and report them, right? So then that's what happened, and it's sort of a retaliatory thing because he's an incel. You know that thing, they keep calling him incels, but he's actually a sociopath. In the other case too, in that woman case that came up, which I skimmed it briefly. They're like, yeah, she was diagnosed as being bipolar. I go, okay, that's it. I go, it's just a full blown laziness of not seeing what this is. And I said there's just a cluster of things in there where they'll just like go, oh, they're just depressed, or it's just anxiety, or it's just bipolar. I go, I guarantee you they keep doing this. Yeah. And that person was a serial killer. Anyway, so on the next story, here's another one that's exactly the same. I had to look at this case because it was at the time of my stuff. However, he was arrested before I set foot here, which is good because this was written in January 15 of 1992. So he's not alone. He's just one of the ones that got caught. There's a tank of them in LAPD that have done this, and I have a long list with photos of a tank of them as well, because somebody did some hard research and put that stuff together, and then somebody gave it to me. So it was not even the tip of the iceberg of that problem here in law enforcement. So, LAPD officer held in rapes of 4 women. Police, he is accused of threatening to arrest or jail them. He allegedly shot another who was trying to flee his advances. Okay, so what makes him any different than a Ted Bundy? Zero, nothing. So this was in January 15, 1992, okay? And he's a socio, straight up. Okay, so why, I mean, if this case came out today, I don't see it happening the way that it did here, because he's a serial offender. He's a serial rapist, and he tried to murder here. Where you would only get 3 years, right? This guy only got 3 years for this, okay? And those are the only victims that came forward. Now, mind you, he was a officer for 8 years. We're gonna find out. But this saga actually continues on to the other day. Okay, so authorities on Tuesday accused of LAPD officer of being a serial rapist who preyed on at least 4 women, and you know there's probably a million more. And I also want to point out, when you do research, you need to know that the media upaged little kids to just calling them women, and so you don't exactly know the ages of the victims in these stories. So when you read it, you have to keep that in mind. So when they say prostitutes, generally, they're talking about child human trafficking and things like that. So you have to be aware of that when you're reading stories from the past. So, and that's another way how it just passed off to everybody, like, oh, you know, they were raping some prostitutes. They didn't even say rape. They said they were with some prostitutes. And basically what that means is that the officers were with human trafficking victims, and none of it would be consensual, even if they were sex workers. So yeah, it became this thing. And so here it says at least 4 women. So we don't know the ages of the women, you know. While he was in uniform, threatening to arrest or jail them unless they had sex with them. And I told you it was just a couple months later that an officer came up to me, and I will stand with it, that I believe he was looking for a child to rape. And then it turned badly when I said, I'm a daughter of law enforcement. Yeah. And then why didn't he rescue me though? Also as well, right? Those are 2 things that were in that confrontation, right? So no, it wasn't this guy, because he was already busted here. So I was like, if he wasn't, then you know. Officer Garnier Beasley, he was 31. He was 31 at the time and was jailed at downtown police headquarters after surrendering to authorities at Southwest Division Station, where he worked as a patrol officer at the time the alleged rapes took place. If he's shooting at women and trying to kill them, where's the other victims, you know? Probably somewhere in the desert where they don't want to go check. Authorities say Beasley, an 8-year veteran, raped 4 women between May and September last year and shot a 5th woman who was trying to escape from him in an incident that occurred while he was off duty, right? So essentially, the deputy district attorney, Scott Gordon, who's prosecuting the case, you had an officer coming into contact with women in various areas of the city, which would include children, women, and kids, in various areas of the city on the street. And he spoke to them and he took them into custody for various things, including possible warrants and at a location away from the initial contact that he sexually assaulted them. Gordon said there may be more victims. The 8-count criminal complaint filed by the district's attorney's office Tuesday afternoon included 4 charges of rape and by threat and to arrest and 2 of oral copulation under the color of authority. It says that twice Beasley had probationary officers in his patrol car with him as he approached the victims. On those days, Gordon said Beasley was serving as a training officer. But the trainees, and male and female officers whose names were not disclosed, were not charged with any crimes. So they just sat back and watched it. That's nice. And prosecutors said there was no indication that they participated in the alleged rapes. In one instance, the probationary officer was left in the patrol car while the alleged rape occurred, and Gordon would not elaborate, saying an investigation is continuing. This is bullshit. Like I said, there was another female that was involved with jumping me in the middle of the night with this thing, and I was like, I could have died. So then what would have happened after it? There was a lot of female officers out here too as well. And to say that they're not part of anything, well, you not doing anything is being a part of something. Did you report it? Did you report it? Because isn't that what they say to us, right? Didn't you report it? Yeah, exactly. So they can kiss my butt. Beasley also faced 1 count of assault with a gun in connection with the shooting, which authorities say occurred after he paid a woman $10. $10, you guys, to perform a sexual act in an alley. He is also charged with receiving stolen property, a handgun investigators found when they searched his locker at the southwest of station. The handgun had been reportedly stolen during a robbery in another police department division, but Gordon and Beasley is not a suspect in the robbery. Can you explain that one? They are gang members, the LAPD, and he's not alone. That's why I'm just saying he's not alone. It's organized crime, but you're going to see it. You're going to see a little bit after this, a lot longer after this. The officer is scheduled to be arraigned today in the court, and if he's convicted on all charges, he can be sentenced to 70 years in prison. See, they write this, right? They're all 70 years, man. 70 years. This is a serious goddamn crime. That's how they put it in the media, right? But that's actually not the reality of this thing. The accusations against Beasley surfaced on September 23rd. So I guess that would be in 1991. And I came out here actually in 1991. It was the month before, which is still scary, okay? So that's when another incident happened, but it wasn't with the police officers. So they were not part of the story at that time. It was a perpetrator related to a celebrity, right? And so it says, after a friend and an alleged victim flagged down a patrol car and told the officer that the woman had just been raped by a uniformed patrolman. Well, he was on patrol, right? It's not off duty. The 39-year-old woman later said that she had been picked up by Beasley and his trainee partner at about 1 p.m. in the southwest part of the city. She told authorities that Beasley handcuffed her and took her to the alley a few blocks away, telling her that he had a warrant for her arrest, but that she could avoid going to jail in exchange for sexual favors. And Gordon said the woman that was then driven to a hotel, and while the trainee stayed in the car, Beasley took her to a room and raped her. She was then driven back to the area where she had been picked up and released. He handcuffed her, took her into an alley, okay, then told her that. Okay, Gordon said the woman was then driven to a hotel and the trainee stayed in the car, okay, and then she was then driven back to the area where she had been picked up and released. While the police department and the district's attorney's office investigated, Beasley was assigned to desk duty. Yeah, I told you, when they got busted, they would put him on desk. And then, so technically what was happening was when I was calling, I was getting the desk guys that got busted. So they're all pissy incels that they're pissed, right? Because they're like, this desk job is for women only. This isn't a man's job at a desk. Like they're doing this shit. So like I would call or come in and then they to report like a serious crime or something and they needed to come or whatever. And that's when that, like the bombing one, they're like, nothing. No, you heard nothing. Yeah, that was the desk guys. So the desk guys were doing misconduct. It's like, look, the guys that are on the desk are busted for misconduct, right? They put them on the desk and then they do more misconduct for the public. So when we go in and talk, so that's the tail off, I think, is what's happening now, where they're like, don't talk to us, call 911, go to a website. Because anytime you deal with us, we're not to be trusted. That's just them saying you can't trust us. As I said, that was part of our investigation, where it was me having discussions with them directly, and them doing all this misconduct. But do you see why that's occurring? Because the guys that are busted get thrown at desk duty. Just pointing it out. And then transferred to home duty. What's that? A form of paid suspension. And so I got raped to shit, and these guys set me up to get me kidnapped and covered up a drug ring. But this is the actuality. This is the truth of the early 90s right here, okay, guys? And this was like all of them. This is not just some of them. They're putting the bad guys on desk duty. It wasn't just him, right? He's a serial rapist, you know what I mean? So they throw him on the desk. We take this seriously, dude. We're going to still put you towards the public, because now you're going to deal with the public when they come in. And you're going to be pissy because you're a socio and you're a massive criminal. And that's how they did it. The three other alleged rapes, victims, along with the woman who said she'd been shot in the leg by Beasley, came to authorities' attention during the investigation. One of the victims told investigators that she was arrested on coke charges, handcuffed, and taken to the Southwest Station by Beasley and his partner, a female probationary officer. Once outside the station, Gordon said Beasley handcuffed the victim and told the trainee officer to go inside with the drugs they had seized while he took the woman back out to look for narcotics locations. Instead, Gordon said Beasley took the woman to an underground garage, ordered her to take off her clothes and raped her, and then released her. Sounds about right. Okay, so now why is this coming up? What did he do now? Okay. Yeah, he's in trouble again. So here's the facts of this. If you have ASPD and you're a socio son of a bitch, it does not go away. This is the general thing about it. And if they had that way to cure them, the world would be a safer place. Okay. My thing is focusing in on the real problems of that thing, which we could tell initially when they looked into that whole thing, it was a bunch of socio men, and they didn't tackle it at all. I do think there's some hope in the world somehow that we can correct this issue with some of these people anyway. Maybe not this one, but yes, it's a serious problem. And the sooner that you catch it in children, we won't be seeing shit like this. Okay. But this guy is not curable. And so you have to look at it like this. They let him out. They only said tap, tap on your hand for all that crap for 3 years. He only got 3 years. Even though they said up to 70 years. That's supposed to make you, the public, feel better. You women, to feel better about these pro-rapist men, this pro-rapist law enforcement. Because to sit here and try to paint a picture that he was the only one, he didn't have a bunch of pals involved in here, is bullshit, because I was out here. So, this is what he did. Now, this also slaps down that stupid guy on Oxygen yesterday, where he's like, the serial rapists, they don't change their MO. Well, first off, they're all socios, okay? If it's criminal, they're there. Do they have a preference on things? Sometimes, yeah, they prefer to only do certain things like doing that. Would they be normal outside of that? Hell no. They would be a jerk. They would be a pig. They would be all the people that I'm talking about right now. They'd be all the ones online sitting there talking shit about women all day long. They're the ones that are just like you. So, this guy here, he's a registered sex offender, ex-LAPD officer arrested in human smuggling case. That fits really well, right? Because it's human trafficking, basically. And it's a crime, and that's his thing. And also, a registered sex offender who identified himself as lieutenant with the LAPD was arrested on suspicion of human smuggling and possession of a ghost gun. Okay, so he had a ghost gun. He's running around saying he's LAPD still, like it's 1992. He's doing all these underworld crimes. Nothing changed, right? He's 60 something years old now, okay? Exactly. And the problem is they just threw him in for 3 years. They think, what is this mentality of the prison anyway? You threw him in there and you think all of a sudden it's just like, you've been a bad boy and you're going to come out and learn your lesson. That's not how this is going on, you guys. Because it's the framework of their brain. And if you do not tackle that, nothing's going to change, right? As you see, nothing does. This is, we're clocking this one. This one's perfect because it's just proof of that bullshit right there. It's just the majority of them do not get busted. The majority of the public is a damn socio. The majority of the fucking public okays this conduct as everyday normal behaviors. And it is not. And so if you have that going on, then there's this level of, we are not fixing these guys. They're fine. They can rape you. They can do these things and talk shit about you and commit hate crimes all day. And we're going to target you guys anyway, us, right? The victims of this thing. And yes, there's a lot of females that have this problem too. And they love to flip it. Wow, do they love to flip it. But the thing is that's the main issue of this. And so for anybody, the public, to even be okay with the 3-year sentence on what this guy did is smoking crack. And crack was the big thing in 92. And I'm just sitting here going, okay, yeah, we just had another officer, though, that just did this mass serial rape thing, just like him. I don't know if he shot anybody. Maybe he killed people. Who knows? There's a lot of them, right? And like I said, there was some indications of the desert thing because of comments that the officer said that I was like, oh, well, that's a big flag. Why don't we go check the desert? That area where you guys are saying that, all these things are happening and then nobody checks it because it's just too much money. Like some bullshit, right? So, yeah. Okay, so what do you do now? So this was on November 10th. A registered sex offender who was former officer with LAPD. Now, mind you, he worked for 8 years. He was perfect for them. He was a socio before he got the job, and they said, you're the perfect guy for us. There you go. Okay, so had been arrested on suspicion of human smuggling and possession of a ghost gun Monday near the U.S.-Mexico border. Around 9:55 p.m., San Diego Sector Border Patrol agents received a report about human smuggling involving an older model SUV occurring in Campo near border. And Eric with the U.S. Customs Border and Protection said in a news release Friday, the authorities were able to pull over the vehicle that matched the report. And when the agents approached the vehicle, the driver, who identified himself as a lieutenant with the LAPD, handed the agent a badge that looked similar to the one from the department. An immigration inspection was conducted after the border agent noticed 4 people, 3 women, and 1 man in the backseat of the SUV. All 4 individuals admitted to recently crossing the U.S. border illegally, prompting the agent to arrest the driver passengers, according to the officials. They were taken to a nearby Border Patrol station for processing. Authorities found a unserialized 9mm hand, also known as a ghost gun, in the suspect's vehicle, as well as 2 fully loaded 9mm magazines and a shoulder holster. And records check revealed that driver is a former LAPD officer who separated from services in 1993, the same year he was convicted for forcible rape, a crime which he was sentenced to 3 years in prison. They didn't exactly explain that story well in Fox, and they didn't say his name in Fox, so I did some research, and I found him, and that was the story from originally the Beasley guy, okay? That's him. And the way that they wrote this is total crap. He was convicted for forcible rape. He's a serial rapist, and he shot someone, so it was downgraded. So, like, if you read this and you didn't know the original story, you would be like, oh, he got busted for raping someone. But as you see, the original story is absolutely way more serious than that. So, another thing about this guy, it means that he never changed, okay? And he's running around as a police officer in between 30 year span, right? So you're talking 1993 till now, and he's a serial rapist. What do you think happened in between that time? Nothing good. And victims of these officers are afraid to come forward, and mostly depending on the position that they're in. So where's his photo? Why didn't you show his photo, Fox? You're the big protector of rapists, so I don't know. You could have said his name and you could have put his picture up. He's a registered offender, so it's not an alleged thing, right? He got convicted. It's not an alleged thing. So, yeah, they could have put his picture up so other victims could see him and go, oh my God, that guy. That's what they need to know because they might actually think he's a real officer right now running around for the last 30 years. Anyways, so that's the story for today, I guess. Oh, excuse me, I'm wrong. I should have thought about this a little bit more because it was only a 3-year thing. Okay, so he got busted. He started raping everybody long before this, okay? And then he got arrested and it's posted January 15th, 1992. His sentencing was in 93, I guess. So get this. He was in there for 3 years. Let's do some math. I had to think. I was like, wait a minute. 93. Okay. 93 to 94 to 95 to 96. So when did some other stuff started happening? Oh yeah, 96 and 97, right? With Rampart and all the corrupt cops. We cannot answer this what he did when he got out. That's the thing. That's the thing that we need to be focused on because for him to go on like this and he's still running around like I'm an officer, yeah. And at no point did that 3-year thing do anything for this guy, okay? Yeah, there was a lot of corruption right there and after he got out. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a bad thing, you guys. Yeah, so I can't roll him out of the entire thing, but I definitely can roll him out of the first portion, yes. Oh shoot. You know, right when I was ending this, I found some more dirt on that guy. This is interesting. February 10th, 2009. Okay, we got another LA Times story. Rapist background checks came back clear, medical staffing agent says. And you guys remember that I ended up in the ER and there were some laughing cops and some other crazy stuff, but I don't know. But I don't know. The employment, wow. Okay. The employment agency that placed a convicted rapist in large East LA County health clinic said Monday the X-ray technologist's criminal background check came clear, and he did not answer truthfully. The typical socio, the pathological liar that has to make up things all the time and paint themselves as a victim. Okay, so Woodland Hills-based Metascan Staffing Services said it terminated Beasley, 48 at the time, right? Soon after learning of his criminal history. Until last week, Beasley has been working for about a month at the Edward R. Royal Comprehensive Health Center. Oh, God. This is horrifying for me, you guys, because all these bad things happen in between this, right? And I was saying, there was this thing to hide and cover the incident of me in the ER. That was like number one. And then trying to get testing done. It was more near, oh, well, it was in different areas, but anyway, well, again, another day. Metascan conducts a thorough screening of all applicants, which includes a 7-year criminal and sex offender check. Only 7 years? I mean, you want sex offender. Fraud check, license, education, and employment screening, in addition to checks and national terrorist database. Government probably puts all women under that. In Mr. Beasley's case, all required checks came back clear. They followed all policies and procedures. Beasley was convicted in 1992 of raping 2 women. Oh, and as we know, it wasn't just 2 women, okay? He's a serial mass rapist. Raping 2 women under the color of authority while working as an on-duty LAPD officer. He was paroled. Holy crap, dude. He got nothing, you guys. This is even worse. He was paroled in 94. Oh my God. This story is worse. Worse than what we just read. In 94, okay, he was paroled in 94, so he didn't get hardly any time. He was hired 4 years later as an X-ray technologist at County USC. I told you I went to USC. That was part of our thing, and it was really bad. But anyway, USC Medical Center, okay, but in Boyle Heights, despite disclosing his rape convictions in his job application, he was later transferred to what was then called Martin Luther King Jr. Drew Medical Center in Willowbrook. County police bars managers from hiring workers whose criminal history conflict with the job. which county officials say Beasley clearly did when he was fired last August. Another facility where Beasley worked as an x-ray technologist, Northridge Hospital Medical Center. That place, I would have to look into it, but there was a place out here that actually was part of some complaint reports. But anyway, has also said a background check it ran when he worked there from 2000 to 2001 and came back clear. Holy crap. Beasley's first name was misspelled in some court records as Garnier. The Times found during an examination of criminal and civil cases. Martin Mathis, an attorney representing Beasley in his appeal of his termination from the county job, could not be reached for comment. He has said that Beasley was a go-to guy during his tenure, and he believed that his client had been unfairly targeted. Here we go. Okay. This is the typical life of a sociopath. I mean, this case couldn't be even more perfect either, because he purposely probably put, his name a little bit differently there too. And he served almost no time, you guys, for being a serial rapist. And he's working in the medical field. I worked in the medical field. That crap right there explains everything. If any woman up in here knows and they've had these terrible experiences, and like the nurse guy that threw me off a gurney, I could not believe this. The conduct of these people. I was like, are you sure you didn't check their background? That guy's a total sociopath. The one nurse. And I was saying, they're making fun of the nurse thing, but look at what field he went into. Oh my God. I don't know what the thing is with that, you guys. It's really scary. It is really scary. It makes me not want to ever go back in, because I actually had a really bad experience in this last thing that I was talking about. In the worst way from the female. And the male doctor was pretty bizarre in that as well. Yeah. Yeah. Why file a report? Because here's the thing with the medical. See, the medical board is just as guilty in the conduct of LAPD being rapists, because when I report these people, they have made excuses for them and said that we're not going to do anything about their bad bedside manners, throwing me off gurneys, sexually assaulting me, doing malpractice, things that shouldn't have been done to me, for made up things, multiple things like that, right? And mostly if I report a sex crime, which was the top of the most serious in this, I mean, well, that last thing that just happened too was pretty damn serious too. But when you go to them, they completely cover it up, like completely cover it up. They purposely run out time. They do not contact authorities. But here's the deal. You're going to contact other rapists about a rapist. I mean, like, and they hired him. I told you there's a tank about people in that field. But I didn't work with a lot of them. It was me going to them later where all this like terrible conduct started happening. It was actually in mid 2000. Well, it was in January 2005 when it started, when I had these crazy, when I called 911 for an ambulance, right? That was my first experience ever with an ambulance. And those people were the most atrocious son of a bitches who should have never had a job. I mean, it's no joke. And I was saying I had all the evidence like on the table, because I was assuming that they would take it because it had something to do with something that night, right? And instead they made threats to me and putting me down and were threatening to leave me there, and then left the evidence. Okay, so I was like, oh, you just fucked up a crime now. Because it turned into a more serious thing later, right? Like we found out, they were suspecting this other stuff. So then what happened when we bring up USC, because they bring them up here, nobody would let me go in for tests. And then they go, well, it could be this, but we need to rule that out. And I go, but we're not going to do it, right? That's what they were saying. They weren't going to do the test to even rule that out, right? I was like, I did not get cancer that night. There was an incident that night. They're like, we need to rule out cancer. Okay, fucking fine. Then do it. Oh, well, you don't have medical insurance, so we're just going to tell you you might have cancer, but we're not going to do a test to tell, know if you do. Yeah, that's what they were doing, because they didn't give us medical back then. So then they go, well, you can go to USC and they'll do that biopsy for free. And then they tried to charge me. They did. They're a bunch of assholes. And I had to report them. I had to report USC to the health board. And so when I reported USC to the health board, to the health department or something, because what happened was they sent me in there. They made me wait 8 hours. They did a horrible procedure. They didn't do it right. It was really not done good. Then they didn't want to give me the paperwork right when I came back in. I go, I need to get the paperwork to give to the doctor, And they're like, you're going to have to wait. They were going to make me wait for like 8 or 10 hours or something. So I called and made a complaint, and then they gave it to me right away. And then after, they want to retaliate and try to charge me for the whole thing. I go, no way. Eat it. Yeah, I had the worst experience with USC. And they were dragging in the jailmates over in there too at the same time. This guy was literally chained up. This was the craziest thing. I'm sitting in the waiting room, right? And his parole officer drags this guy in, sits him next to me, and his legs are chained up. I was like, okay. I don't know what he got in trouble for. Maybe he killed somebody. I have no idea. And they sit him in the same, I was like, what is this shit? I was like, what is this shit up in here? Yeah, so that's what happened. They were taking all the jail guys down there. And yeah, just in the waiting room right next to me. I don't know if you guys know that. That's why I was like, I wanted to tell you guys that. If I had a camera then, my phone or anything, this is 2005 or, 6, somewhere, 6 maybe. Maybe that was in 6 because I was going through a long thing of them not doing the proper procedure here. And if we have a suspected murder case, then an attempted murder case, then they should have got all that information right, and they should have treated it properly, and they didn't. And it was LAPD's conduct that made it even worse because they thought it was hilarious that I ended up in the ER. And I go, well, you should be looking at them because this conduct right here is so outrageous. I can't even believe it. And so now you're seeing criminal LAPD, dude, working at all these medical facilities. I never read that. This is crazy stuff. I'm sure maybe there's more on this guy. He's a socio, so he's going to be nonstop criminal in everything he does. He's going to lie to get his job. He's going to do all these things. He's going to do something bad while on the jobs too. Could be even just to get drugs at the field. You know what I mean? It could be anything. You don't want this guy anywhere near you. Yeah, so, yeah, you guys been wondering, like, how are all these crimes happening? All of a sudden, all these meds are gone from the hospital facility, or, someplace gets hit up, right? And somebody must have some knowledge, inner knowledge, just, oh, this guy right here, he's the one that would do that kind of garbage. Yeah, do you want this guy helping you at all? He's a serial rapist. You want him being an x-ray tech? Yeah, there was one creepy x-ray tech at this other place too. It's just like, take off your clothes and just walk right out. I'm like, dude, what the hell? And like right outside the door is all the people that come in. I was like, I cannot even deal with the conduct of the medical field at all of what's going on with them because they never get in trouble. They're just as bad. I was saying they're almost as worse than the cops to deal with.